everybody. Thank you all for coming out to Sunday Stories Presents Brown People Don't Read. My name is Jenny, and I'll be your host for the night. I'm delighted to present 5 emerging writers of color who are here to share their stories tonight with all of us. Sunday Stories is a group that started at Mills College in 2008. It was born out of the creative writing program, the master's program, and they've been meeting mostly on Sundays since 2008. And they regularly put on lots of literary readings all over San Francisco, and even sometimes in the East Bay. The members tonight from Sunday Stories that I'll be reading are Scott Duncan, Lisa Gray, and Blanca Torres. And, surprise, surprise, we have some great guest readers. We've got Roger Porter, who was briefly a member of Sunday Stories, and we've got Sylvia Eugenia, who's
a founding member.
Yeah, founding member, and Sylvia, who's here all the way from the South Bay, you guys. So this is the 3rd installment of Brown People Don't Read, and the theme is something that these writers have approached as a challenge. If you take a look around at the literary world, you might have noticed that it is widely dominated by people who are not brown, catering their writing to people who are not brown. So this is a myth that we need to bust, and the writers tonight are going to set out to prove that brown people do indeed read and write literature. So if you like what you see tonight, you can learn more about tonight's readers on the Sunday Stories Facebook page and at brownpeopledon'tread.weebly.com. We're also going to be passing around a mailing list, and you can keep kind of updated on future events, and their forthcoming chapbook, which should be coming out this fall. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Roger Porter, our first reader. Let him hear people. And he's a writer and educator from Oakland, California, whose first book, The Souls of Hoodfolk, is available at lulu.com. He describes himself as an average everyday man from East Oakland, writing about average everyday hood life. And you can follow his blog at www.ghettosun.com. Give it up for Roger.
A fleeting daydream. Sometimes when I'm in the midst of people watching while at a cafe or walking down the street, I admit to having very random thoughts. Oftentimes I see people who are mentally ill talking to themselves and blurting out obscenities or whatever else comes to mind, and I become envious. I know how strange that must sound, but I can't deny the truth. I am aware that most people are either repulsed by the mentally ill, indifferent, or sympathetic. However, you must be aware that I am not most people. I honestly think that it takes a lot of courage to walk down the street wearing whatever clothes you want to wear, unkempt hair, and an unshaven face, knowing that people are going to point, laugh, or stare and not care at all. I admire the people who we tend to call crazy in a way because no matter what happens, they continue to sing their song. They refuse to fall in line like the rest of us and do normal things and have normal ambitions and wear normal clothes. Assata Shakur once wrote, "Only the strong go crazy, the weak just go along." Therefore, the mentally ill people who we see on the streets may not have families or homes like us sane folks, but they have something that we don't have, the strength to go against the grain. And on these days, I just want to give up my laptop and roam the earth until my shoes get holes in the bottom. I want to wear a full-length leather jacket in the middle of July and walk around shirtless in the winter, not caring if I live or die. Then maybe I meet a friend that no one else can see but me, and we'll have lengthy conversations about love, hypocrisy, sweet potato pie, and The Little Mermaid. And when we walk down the street, people will clear the way and give us the whole sidewalk because they respect us that much. And we will have peace of mind, we will have healthy souls, and we will truly love ourselves. People will look at us and shake their heads as if to say, "What a shame." And we will have pity on those poor, unfortunate souls because both of us have the foresight to jump out right before the whole thing exploded while they all died in a wreck. Then my daydream ends. I save my document, log out, and close my laptop. Yeah, so there's another one, it's called Why Am I Educated? Why am I educated if I still have to live from check to check? My car overheated and now I have to borrow $440 to get it fixed. I'm already behind on my student loan payments and child support, so I guess owing one more person won't really make a difference. But of course it does. Why am I educated if my cousin still suffers from mental illness? Of all the fanciful philosophies and culturally relevant literature that I studied while at university, I can share none of it with him. He is released from the county jail and comes straight to my doorstep in his county-issued sandals. He asks to come in, and I allow him to, as long as he understands he cannot spend the night. I give him clothes and food, and he takes a shower. He wants to tell me his sad story, but I don't want to hear it again. After all the letters I've written and the money I've lent him, I'm burnt out. I usher him out of the door at about 10:30 p.m. He bangs on the door again at 6 o'clock in the morning and said he left something at my house on the table. I check for it, but by the time I go back to tell him it isn't there, he's gone. How is my education going to lessen the grief that nearly overcomes me when I have to tell him that he is no longer welcome in my house and that he must never come back? Why am I educated if I'm still going to live in the hood? I don't stay on the block for street credibility or because I think it's fly or because it's convenient, but it's because I'm trapped. Just like the guys who hang out in the corner and the woman next door with all the babies, I can't leave, I can't get out. I probably die here, overeducated and in extreme debt. Why am I educated if Sean Scott, Ryan Keel, Lamar Brown, Kevin Reese, and Eric Allen are still going to be blown away? How's my education going to stop a man from shooting 8-year-old Alicia Cardine to death while she was at a sleepover? Is my education really helping anyone, or is it creating a distance between my community and myself? Why am I educated if I still can't find full-time work? Why did I listen to the propaganda about education opening up all the doors and guaranteeing success? Why am I educated and still poor? How does this happen? Is it me? I don't get it. Why am I educated if I'm still going to be confused? That was the stress. This is the stress relief. This one's called A Brown Girl's Lips, because, brown people do read and write. And, so. Brown Girl's Lips. I like the bottom one the best. I like the way it protrudes and glistens. I like the fact that she can't conceal it. I like the black mold that decorates the left side. I like it when she smiles and when she pouts and when she laughs. I like it when she bites it. The top one is civilized. It's conservative. She presses it down on the bottom one when she is trying to concentrate. It doesn't curve as much when she smiles. Her top lip is somewhat ashamed of itself. It doesn't portray her emotions, but it complements the bottom one rather well. Together they bring balance. The lady meets the savage. They come together to bring her melody into the world. They come together to make sure she always gets her way. The girl is so spoiled. I could run from her, but I can never leave her. She plays the games that I like to play. She likes the dances that I know how to do, and she always moves in my direction. She rotates around me as I spin on my axis, facing her constantly. The light that I generate illuminates her, and she gives me divine purpose. We understand one another, and what we don't understand, we're okay with. I don't love her at the moment, but I find her energy to be very necessary. She isn't one of the beautiful ones that I mistakenly let go while drunk with the hardships of my past. Quite the contrary. She is the one that needed time to grow. I don't control her, can't control her, but she wants me to think that I can. I like the games that she plays. It took me a long time to confess it to myself, but I do. And then I play games too. The truth is that I follow her lead, and this is the one thing that I could never allow her to know. Thank you very much.
And it's just going to stay amazing. Our second reader is Blanca Torres, and she grew up on the dry eastern side of Washington State. She left her hometown of Pasco to attend Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, where she learned the real meaning of culture shock. She has written for just tons of major papers in Detroit, Kansas City, Seattle, Baltimore, Fort Worth, Texas, and now San Francisco. And she writes for the San Francisco Business Times. So you may have read some of her pieces. She earned an MFA in fiction from Mills and was the 2009 winner of the Marion Hood Boas Howarth Prize for Fiction for Children and Young Adults. Also in 2009, she completed a residency as part of VONA, Voices of Our Nation Arts. And this past summer, she attended Cristina Garcia's Dos Brujas Writers Conference and Summer Fish Trap in Eastern Washington, or Oregon. She's putting together a collection of short stories, and she's working on a really amazing memoir about her mother's childhood in Mexico. She also contributed to an anthology of essays, Wise Latinas, Writers on Higher Education, and that's set to be released in spring 2014 by the University of Nebraska, so look for that. Give it up for Blanca.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. This is our third year, and it's always more exciting and nerve-wracking every time. So I'm going to share a short story. Before I do that, just want to say thank you to Scott and Lisa, who have been amazing writing partners and friends for many years. And they are the ones that keep saying, finish your novel, which still trying to do. So this is a short fiction story, and the title is End of Story. 1. A memory. I stood there, waiting for you. I watched you as you picked up your luggage and came towards me with that smile on your face. You seemed relieved, thankful even. Then you hugged me and I felt my body stiffen. I hoped you wouldn't notice my tension and unease under my poofy white coat, the one with 2 layers and a hood. It bothered me that you surprised me like that, not telling me you were coming to Seattle. Later you told me that your college friend had stood you up and I was the only other person you knew in town. Who were you to wake me up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday? Who were you to make me drive to the airport in a snowstorm? 2. Another memory. I was in Mexico once, age 9 or 10. I was with my cousins playing in the stone patio of the concrete house where my mother was born. I bent over to pick up a ball, and with my head upside down, I saw a young girl wearing a white dress with lace edges and black Mary Janes near the back of the room where they washed the clothes. It was just an instant, not even a second long when I saw her. It could have been my imagination or a memory from a dream. I think she was my mother's sister, the one who died of tetanus when she was 10. A nail tore through her heel and sent poison up her body like a rocket. In my mother's version of the story, her sister was dead for several hours before waking again. She told my grandfather she had been to the place where the raindrops detached themselves, and an old man with a long beard asked if she wanted to go home or stay. She said she wanted to see her family again. It was a short visit. She died by nightfall. 3. A dream. I dreamt once we were in Seattle. I wanted to show you around, take you to the places I knew. I told you to come with me, and you said, sure, I'm right behind you. But you wouldn't follow. I turned back, and you were halfway down the block, going the wrong way. I came closer until you were within arm's reach, but I couldn't touch you no matter how much I wanted to grip your shoulders. 4. Do you remember when we first met? That night in San Francisco when I could smell your cologne from across the room, and I was wearing those tall black boots you love so much? I pulled you from your seat onto the dance floor. You laughed. You must have thought I was crazy, but you danced with me anyway. Later, you asked me what made me do that, and I couldn't think of an answer. It felt like we were trespassing those nights we made love in the apartment you were house-sitting. You talked to me about your job working at the investment firm. The boss loved you so much, he said, don't you dare buy a motorcycle. My son works for Google. You could inherit the business. And I was amazed. The son of Mexican mojados taking over a firm? I was a lonely intern trying to land my first real job. And you said, let's not make it official. You're going back to Seattle soon. I spent too much time watching you sleep, admiring each eyelash, your body toned from years of playing soccer in college, and the angled sides of your face before I finally let myself go to sleep, worried you might wake up and catch me snoring. Then the internship ended and I had to leave. I was sad the day I dropped you off at the soccer field on a Sunday morning and said, goodbye, I'll call you from Seattle. 5. The visits. My grandmother, Diega, the only grandparent I ever met, used to visit me at night. She died when I was 5, my first funeral. I didn't cry because I didn't understand death back then. She would come when my door to my bedroom was open and I could see into the living room. I knew it was her because I could hear her tapping on the desk in the corner. Her tapping, the same nervous habit I inherited, was our shared rhythm. She stayed for only a few moments before her spirit swept past my bedroom door like a bullfighter's cape. I wasn't afraid. I wanted her to stay longer, just a moment longer. 6. I always wanted to tell you that I loved you, but the words never came up for air. They drowned on their own. I didn't make them. They were too heavy, like a large black seal hit with a club and sinking into the water. 7. You weren't honest with me either. You could have told me so many times when I was still in Seattle, missing you. I kept a picture of us on my bookshelf. I stared at it when we talked on the phone. It helped me picture you 1,000 miles away, standing on the balcony of your parents' apartment. With the receiver up to your ear. You could have said those simple words, I have a girlfriend, but you didn't. Maybe I didn't want to know. 8. But that's the kind of truth that likes to make a show. It fell like a bomb into my lap and exploded, leaving ugly black marks on my face. I finally made it back to California, back to you, back to where it all began. I made you chicken and ravioli so good you asked for thirds. Then you finally decided to say it. Her name is Gwen, and she's a cool girl. I felt numb. You asked me what I thought, and I couldn't say anything. Do you remember that part? Do you remember telling me I must be thinking something because you could see it in my eyes? What did you see? Did you see my heart sinking all the way down into my intestines? I like it when lives, loves, and stories end on their own. I like watching them pull away and set their own course, like a black cloud in the sky. You were gone, long gone, but you didn't want me to forget. You wanted me to still answer the phone and ask how things were going, even though your words burned me like a hot curling iron searing my scalp. Sometimes the past lingers, so you have to force it gone and shovel the dirt into the grave yourself. You have to clench your eyes closed and hope the darkness will blend it into something black, unrecognizable, and dead. Thank you.
It's not every day that you get a visit from the dead. But next, you might get something a little dirtier. After earning a BA in English from Spelman College and completing the University of Denver's Publishing Institute, Lisa D. Gray put writing aside to build a career in community development. Then, 15 years ago, she moved to San Francisco, picked up the pen, and started writing short stories. Since then, she's gotten an MFA in English and Creative Writing from Mills, and has attended VONA, the Fine Arts Work Center, and for a few snowy weeks in 2012, shivered and wrote during a residency at the Vermont Studio Center. She is a 2013 winner of the San Francisco Foundation's Joseph Henry Jackson Award for her manuscript, That Strong Man in Me, which is an excerpt from her novel, One Summer, which I'm dying to read. You can find links to her literary musings on her multimedia blog, The Randomness of Me, which is at randomnessofme.tumblr.com, and at about.me/Lisa D. Gray. And without further ado, Lisa.
Hello, and first thank you for everyone for coming out tonight. And I am going to read, actually I'm going to move a little. And I hope can you still see me, Sonia?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from my book, One Summer, and it came out recently in in Mission at 10th, which is the literary magazine for the California Institute for Integral Studies. So let's thank them for having the foresight to publish me. And this actually is called The Fourth Time. I melted in that pew, melted right down to almost nothing. And it felt like the only thing left of me was that hard-to-hold truth I'd been denying. He did not want us. That morning, I'd wanted to just roll over and snuggle a little more deeply into my dream, but my Aunt AC started tapping on my door as soon as the sun peeked in. Rise and shine, she chirped, like she did almost every morning of my life, and the nauseatingly thick smell of bacon pushed me out of bed. When I walked into the church later that morning, Thad was up in the choir loft. His long-fingered hand swiped his forehead, and his eyes darted over the congregation, and I hoped he was searching for me. Mrs. Jennings pounded on the keys of the scuffed upright piano at the front of the church, and Mr. Jones banged on the tambourine. as the choir leapt into another hymn, and Thad's eyes slid upward as if he'd find an answer there, as if God would whisper one in his ear while he sang and tell him that what he wanted me to do was all right. His eyes found me and held me, and I melted right there in that pew. When his eyes touched me like that, I knew he was thinking about our baby and how he didn't want her. Thinking of ways to convince me to get rid of her. I knew it was a her, even though I couldn't have been more than 6 weeks along. Pregnant was not a part of my plan, but I would not do what Dad wanted. I couldn't. He was so nice at first. I wondered why he was sniffing after me, and my Aunt AC told me he's just doing what men do. They always searching for something new to taste on, and for Mr. Thad Baker, you is a new thing. AC thinks all man is out to get something for nothing, but I didn't think he was like that. I mean, he is the preacher's son. Thad Baker was smart and funny and cute and popular, and he was going to Morehouse in the fall. That's why he wanted me to get rid of her. Said he couldn't have no baby tying him to Taylor. And when he said it, I knew he meant me too. It was like up until then he'd been wearing a mask that hid his selfishness. And I should have known though, because he left a trail of clues. Thad had put me in a box and only took me out when he wanted a sip of me. And in that year we was together, he revealed himself to me in small ways, like how he always made sure his back was covered after we finished, but never pulled the blankets up to warm me. And I ignored them. My first time with Thad wasn't that great. And the second and third times wasn't much better. It was like we were two puzzle pieces trying to fit together in the wrong place. Like we were supposed to go together, but wasn't quite a match. But the fourth time was perfect. I lost my place. We was getting off work, and he'd asked me if I wanted to share a piece of Miss Maddie's red velvet cake. And, the special on Thursdays. And no one can turn down Miss Maddie's cake. And before we left for the movie, he sliced a thick piece and put it in front of me on the counter. He turned off the lights, and we sat there eating and talking about the day's customers and their tips, or lack of them, as the pine-salty smell of the freshly mopped floor rose up around us. Thad had his daddy's car that night because he lied and told him he was going out with some fellas from the baseball team. Really, though, we was going to watch the drive-in movies. Out in Old Man Tucker's field, there was a flat-roof storage building that we colored kids would climb up on to watch the pictures dance across the screen. They was huge and flickered in the night sky, but we couldn't hear them, so we brought out our transistor radios and listened to WBJZ and they Saturday Night Slow Drag, watching them movies like they was the silent kind old folks talked about. Only colored kids went out there because they didn't let us in the drive-in. Truth is, though, we ain't really go out there to watch the movies. Usually, before whatever was playing was halfway over, most of us was back in our cars, making out. That night, Thad and I watched the first half of The Wizard of Oz, which is my favorite movie because it's one of the few AC took me to as a kid, and I loved that all Dorothy wanted was to get home. As she skipped down the yellow brick road, Thad asked me if I was chilly and wanted to go back to the car. I smiled at him and nodded my head even though it was warm for May, and we both knew we was going to end up in his daddy's back seat. Once we got to the car, things happened fast. Thad put his arm around me and started whispering the words to "You really got a hold on me," as Smokey sang in the background. My head hung back on his arm, which was draped across the top of the seat, and I could see the reflection of the dimly lit dashboard clock in the back window, a little yellow moon with numbers. He eased his hand down to my titty, and my nipples grew hard as I watched his finger slide under it and cup it as if his hand was weighing it. He squeezed it, a fresh peach on a summer stand, as if he was contemplating its size and texture. His thumb massaged one of my nipples, and he flicked it like he was playing with a light switch. Off, on, and I gasped, just a little. Even through my bra, the sensation pinged me to my core. I slid my hand along his thigh and felt it strong under my fingers. He kissed my neck, then the corner of my lips on that little crease, right where they meet, and I parted them for him. I turned to face him, and his mouth found mine. His tongue slid over mine, rough and smooth, salty and sweet all at once, and it was like when Dorothy arrives in Oz, different, scary, exciting, and I slid my hand between his legs, gripping him, caressing him. That eased me back onto the seat, my panties damp, and before he moved on top of me, his eyes drank me, my lips, my breasts. He raised my skirt. His hand felt warm on my thigh as he slid it up my leg, and his eyes held mine. He touched my dampness, then slid his finger inside me and swirled it around, kind of like you do when your mama lets you get that last taste of cake batter in the bowl before she cleans it. He pulled it out and licked it, grinning as he unzipped his jeans, and I slipped off my panties. He got on his knees and eased himself inside of me, and I gasped again, just a little. A sharp, fast pain. He stopped and waited for a second, 2, 3, and then he gently pushed himself deeper until I could feel all of him. We couldn't find our rhythm at first. He was going up as I was going down, him left, me right. But then we stopped and settled into each other, felt each other, and let the music in the background guide us into a slow drag that melded our bodies together, him gripping my behind, me wrapping my legs around his and tilting my hips up to meet him as the hard plastic seat stuck to my damp skin and the door handle pressed into my back. We slid further down the seat, and when I opened my eyes, I saw the little moon clock hovering above his head as he raised my blouse, then my bra. His mouth found my nipple, and he traced little circles around it with his tongue before biting it with his teeth, and I yelped and giggled all at the same time. I clasped his sweaty face between my palms, pulling it down to mine, then ran my tongue along his lips before dipping it into his mouth. I felt his legs tense, his body stiffen, and the pupils of his eyes grew wide as he let out a howl that came from somewhere deep inside of him, and he melted into me. He collapsed on top of me, his breath deep and hard as we lay still for a moment, 2, 3, before he lifted himself up and onto his arms. He was still inside me and began rocking back and forth, slowly, moving in and out, wetly, until I felt myself grip him tightly. I gulped in a mouthful of air and my toes flexed out, then curled, and my whole body zinged, tingled. I came out of myself, lost myself in him, and then I was floating out above the car, skipping down the yellow brick road, passing the moon clock in the sky towards home, and it was perfect, like it never was again. And as I sat there that Sunday morning, melting in that pew, his eyes holding mine, the choir's voice soaring, pulsing around me, I hoped that he was torn. I hoped that he knew the cost of his request and that it hurt him. I wanted him to feel something for her, our baby. I wanted him to know that a part of why I went to the meetings and marches and let white folks spit on me and call me nigga was that I did not want little girls to have to grow up without their daddies. And I didn't want fathers to have to make choices that left their daughters searching for them in the backseats of cars on summer nights like me.
Well, no one can say that I didn't warn them.
Sorry.
Scott Russell Duncan is a lingerer and a lurker. He's seen a president eat enchiladas. He's escaped being held hostage by nuns. And he even fled Mills with an MFA. He keeps his lair in Oakland. His ancestors are Californio, Hispano, and Texian, so he's half white guy and Mexican. His novel in progress is The Ramona Diary of SRD, a memoir and fictional diary reclaiming the mythology of Chicano, California, which has a lot to do with a 19th century novel called Ramona. And if you want to read some of his book, chapters of it appear in Border Census and Label Me Latino. And you can check him out and his work at scottrusselluncan.com.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Scott. Hi. piece is called My Heart is Bathed in Chilies. The first time I had real hot peppers, a part of me died. Home was virtually a pepper-free zone, as my Chicano mother only ate pickled jalapenos, whose vinegar I found unappealing, and my white father made a pico de gallo he called hot sauce, which I would later call Anglo sauce. Yet I saw hot pepper consumption often as I stayed every summer with my grandparents in LA. We'd eat over at my Aunt Linda's, and everyone would dump hot sauce over everything at breakfast, and every time I would ask, is there any ketchup, for me and my sister. Aunt Linda would look at me, I don't know, eyes wide. Hey, Rebecca, is there any ketchup left over from when you dated that guy, the gringo? You mean Steve? Yeah. My cousin Rebecca would then bring the year-old ketchup bought for some polite and terrified white boyfriend for our eggs or potatoes. All eyes would be on me and my sister in our ketchup shame. Grandma would stare at the globs on our plate and say, you going to eat that? My uncle would say, I think they are. My sister, Clara, the tougher one, would glare back at our family saying, we like ketchup. And everyone would purse their lips and say, we've got to do something about how white you kids are. I met my chili pepper death after one of those ketchup-shamed breakfasts. I walked into the kitchen and saw my Uncle Joe sweating and holding onto the counter. He was eating chips and heaps of salsa. Is it good? I asked. He wiped the side of his face. Oh, it's good. He sputtered. Your grandma made it. There was no place safer than the kitchen with my grandmother, and nothing more inert than the only homemade salsa I knew, my dad's Anglo sauce. So I ate some of Grandma's salsa, a big some. And then I thought I had slurped nail polish remover. It was like drinking the whiskey from the jar that held Joaquin Murrieta's head, marinated Mexican. And years later, when I saw the Crapola movie Interview with a Vampire, and Brad Pitt gets bitten in the graveyard and yelps, then the world goes gray before it becomes hyper rainbow real, I thought, hey, that's how eating my first hot peppers were. Vampirism must be easy. But then, at my first real hot pepper hit, the chilies took the slow bus down my throat and got off of my chest. I looked at my grandmother, whose name Mercy seemed ironic, and asked, why? Why, Grandma, why? Grandma Mercy, washing a pot, called over, don't blame me, Cotty, your uncle likes it. I, too, held the edges of the counter, dreading the mass of chilies ever hitting my stomach. Yet the chilies never made it there, and instead settled on my heart. The chilies consumed a slow, vivid world, and then consumed my heart itself, and I loved them. My uncle patted my back, now as sweaty as his face. We are burning the white boy out of you, mijo. And ever since then, chili peppers have been my vampire blood and air. And often my heart burned because of disappointments and indignations, but all the fire felt like chili pepper fire. Books I read seem to describe it as burning. Seguin, the Tejano hero of the revolution, who was later robbed of everything by the very Texans he fought for, warned Chicanos that we would be treated as foreigners in our own land. Montezuma, writing in his palace, said it better as an Aztec city fell under Cortez. My heart is bathed in chilies. Dissatisfied and disenfranchised hearts burn. My heart burns because 1846 has never ended. My heart burns because I'm still seen as a descendant of Cain, who we know from trash romance novels is our vampire father, but really means I'm a native of the New World. My heart burns because I have survived here in the place of many fires, the dry kindling of my homeland of the Southwest. I've changed many to my side, to chili vampirism. They sweated and burned as I had, till they saw the world anew with chili pepper eyes. If you love me, you love chili peppers. Montezuma's chili swishing heart, and my own spicy heart.
So our last reader is Sylvia Eugenia, and she is Miss Brujita Preciosa, an ability-different, feral femboy queer character back from the cult of domesticity and a fall safety survival strategy. She has recently been coaxed by a JDX mermaid/siren into writing. Again. Finally. 30 years of life down, Brujita is recovering the good pain and sorting through the bad pain of angry muscles and bad balance. From below Ventura Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley, she's an expert on making something out of nothing for dinner. She still calls for the help of San Pascual to find what is lost, and trusts in the curative properties of Sana Sana Culito y Rana to work her through her chronic clumsiness. She is a fucking writer. The end.
Mientras tengas a las botellas, something, we will live with the bottle until we die with the bottle. My mother was an excellent sharpshooter. She had whiskey for the first time when she was 9. We are a lot more in common than skin would tell. Skin would tell. Who the fuck is this bitch? Cállate! So the conversation happens, and my brain starts. I could start by talking about my father's father in Syria to offer up some patriarchal evidence of who this body is made up of, telling a story of strangers. It would be a blood truth, but nothing in me exists attached to that country and custom or people, except for the tradition of quiet. We don't talk about what's under the rug. But I suppose that's not unique, culturally unique. My primary learned lesson is not talking about it. And by it, I mean like anything, like ever. So, I guess keeping with tradition, I really have nothing to say about that. The map of this body focuses on Pisces. I mean the emotional, the fiber, or grit, or saintly body that takes up most of the space of me, my mother. The brown skin of my cred is recessive. I'm mostly see-through. The colonizer and the colonized, the rapist and the raped. I identify. My people are connected as strangers. Let me tell you about this sinvergüenza crying crocodile tears that could never suffer enough to know what real suffering was like. Potty-mouthed chavala who would cause my mother to gasp dramatically. Que vulgarité, que vulgar! This is a story inside an outsider who is made up of the menjorje of the inside of outsiders. Who the fuck is this puta? I haven't a clue. I speak Spanish poorly, understand it fairly. I'm connected and disconnect to Arabic, and I move towards the cross, which is only secondhand, but still holds up like brand new. In thorns and nails, upkept in fashion of my own contemporary guilt. This is performance in self-torture. This is the ability to say words I didn't even know existed. Ay Dios without a second thought has turned into Ay Dios fuck. My mom would be proud. My mom's not so proud. I am the Central American woman who walks away to suffer in silence. Brood alone and boil over till I... Wait. Shit. I'm sorry. Brood alone until I boil over at a single word later. I am the Middle Eastern man. Shit. Who pushes the upset into submission. I probably won't notice you unless I need a fuck or a meal. To all of my ex-girlfriends, she knew not what she had done. Forgive her. Most of the time it's her, but some of the time it's him. Look at me, all nalgas peladas. It's okay, my body, my corazón. Sana, sana, culito de rana. Cállate! Bitch. Brujita. Privileged white girl. Yeah, I know. That's it.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Please sign up for our mailing list, Sunday Stories mailing list, and like the page on Facebook. And enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of Lit Crawl.